was not answered, which was the appropriate thing for the Secretary for Defense to do. And I am delighted that more information has come out to flesh out Hill Norton's ferocious anger about this and the level of importance that he put on this, and that he referenced Larry's and I book in that.
Yeah, well, basically his point, which was the same Ralph Noyes.
Yes, right, Ralph Noyes,
yeah,
who was a Ministry of Defense
Ministry
official.
of Defense
Who wrote the only fictional book based on Rendlesham also.
Who I had the pleasure of meeting actually many years ago, Ralph Noyes.
He's gone too.
And who was also referenced in the MOD
Great.
cases. And both of these gentlemen, both with very high rank, they basically had the same point. They said, well, Ben Waters has to be of defense significance because either we had a case unknown throwing beams at weapons area, which obviously is of defense significance, or else you have a number of American military personnel officers who have control over nuclear weapons hallucinating.
Yes.
And that is of defense significance. And I think
There is an amazing film clip on this terrific sci-fi documentary called UFO Invasion at Rendlesham, a very lurid title for a very solid documentary, where they have a clip of Hill Norton, and this guy radiates ruling class. This is a guy that suffered no fools, not even lightly.
Yeah.
He is the kind of guy who made everybody in the UK jump. He was not an easy person to get along with. He liked Larry and I, and he was very cordial with us when we had our contacts with him. But you see this man sitting there, and he is furious. And he's saying either a UFO, landed at a American base, a nuclear base, and or men were hallucinating in the woods, which would be, very yes, etc. But it's dry as a bone, and it is filled with rage, and it's very funny in context. He was a great guy, but I would not have wanted to cross him. Questions?
Stacy.
Yes, ma'am.
That farmhouse that's always in the background
Yes.
of all these pictures.
Yes.
Is that private land? Is it base
Ah,
land?
right.
Were those people ever interviewed? And
Yes.
What does that whole house have to do with anything? Surely they've been inundated with questions, but I've never heard anything about it.
Thanks, Stacy. That's a great question. Stacy's referring to a farmhouse on a piece of land called Capel Green, which is where Larry's event took place. It is a large farmer's field set in the Rendlesham Forest. It is privately owned by the Greenwell family, but they are a titled family. At the time, we do now know the name of the family that lived in the farmhouse. Larry clearly remembers, there they are early in the morning. This window on the second floor was lit up. For quite a number of years, none of us in the field could chase these people down, and some very dark possibilities were suspected. We now know they were relocated shortly after, that they were alive and well in, I think, or were in some part of England. And if they have ever had anything to say, it has never come into the realm of ufology, and I would imagine they have no interest in being drawn into this story. Sir?
What happened to the photograph that you alluded to earlier in the talk?
I'm not going to say right now. However, another thing, because I'm kind of speaking in reverse here, I didn't present the basics of the case first. In Larry's event, these men, Larry on that night, Larry and other men who were involved out in the field were posted on guard posts all around the base. Larry had been on leave for 2 days, trying to score with a German girl that did not work out. He returned to base unaware of the previous 2 days of UFO events and went to guard mount. Guard mount is a procedure that you go through before you go on guard duty on that night, and D-Flight was going on guard duty that night. So be aware. I mean, Phil Klass, the late Phil Klass, who I think when he passed away, I like to think of being entering heaven surrounded by little grays. He was a son of a bitch. He was a professional debunker, and he made his living belittling the possibility. Phil was the true believer. He knew that there's no such thing as UFOs and aliens, which in itself is rather pompous. How did he know? Because it can't be. People like him would know about it. And because it wasn't, therefore it was something else, and it was his job to expose the charlatans like Antonio over there, not me. Phil actually suggested that maybe the guys in the woods that night in Larry's contingent were blowing joints. Well, that wouldn't even be funny, but is incredibly insulting. What I'm going to say is this guard mount process. If you had had a sip of beer at lunch, if you had had an over-the-counter contact cold pill that morning, you were dismissed. Those men were on guard that night. Larry at the most extreme remote post, perimeter post 18, actually an old World War II pillbox. Remember, only 6 miles from the coast here. 1940 or so, they built a lot of little installations along the coast to deal with the potential German invasion. And he had his M16, he had his Motorola radio. He heard chatter further down the line, could look to the forest, of guys talking about lights in the sky. They were low on the horizon, he couldn't see them from where he was. Shortly after, he's told to close down his post. He's going to be picked up for another assignment. Lieutenant Bruce England, Sergeant Adrian Bustinza, another man, come by in a military pickup truck. They pick him up, they go to the base motor pool where other vehicles are attaching light-alls to the vehicles with their trailer mounts. Light-alls are the military equivalent for the old civilian cleat lights we associate with classic Hollywood premieres, gas-operated. All the gas tanks are topped off, and they are taken off base in a caravan. They're not told where they're going. Interestingly, and it's a tiny footnote, the moment those vehicles rolled off the base, they were in violation of our treaty with the United Kingdom because they had loaded weapons with them. They traveled the 6 miles or so to a logging road, which is just past the sister base's East Gate Road, and they make a left onto the logging road, hence the conjugation of the title of Larry's and my book, Left at East Gate. They go about 1/3 of a mile. The trucks pull into a slight widening in the road. The men disembark. Their weapons are collected and put on an armorer's vehicle, basically another pickup truck with metal racks welded on it. They're broken into 3-man groups. Each group has a Motorola radio. They're sent into the woods that way to quote-unquote investigate a disturbance. As they walk into the woods, they feel a static electricity charge. We all know the kids' party thing. You take a balloon, you rub it on your arm, your hair goes up, static electricity, second grade experiment. Remember that these highly trained military specialists who were involved, certainly on that night, were teenagers. They were in their early 20s overall. Some of them were in their mid-20s. For a lot of us, that's kids, no matter how well armed, no matter how well trained you are. A byproduct was that most of them had pretty healthy heads of hair. And again, small details fleshing out a major event. In describing this to me originally in my apartment on East 46th Street, Larry said, "Do you remember Jiffy Pop?" And if you remember it, you're much older than I am. It's a simple product, a tin pan with some grease in it and some popcorn and a aluminum foil top that expanded. These guys didn't wear helmets, they wore berets, the security cops. As they walked into the area, the static electricity charge started to push the berets off of some of the men's heads. Think about that. One man had broken down, he was crying, he had his back to a tree stump, another man was trying to comfort him. They continue on, they see a glow in the farmer's field beyond the woods. They are ordered to surround a self-illuminated ground fog. This is very chilling to me in a way because it gives me a sense, along with some other things, that our military had some awareness of what they were sending these men into. Surround a ground fog? But again, this is totally anomalous. There's no ambient light. There's no moon. They're a mile from the nearest base. There's only a farmhouse 100 yards away. They're already bringing the light-alls out into the field. None of them will fire up, having trouble with their flashlights, their Motorola radios. This is being filmed. There are men with SLRs, single-lens reflex cameras, movie cameras, and a video camera. 1980, video technology, huge and bulky. You couldn't mistake it. A lot of people say this is nonsense. Larry made it up. He didn't. two British bobbies, two cops from the Woodbridge Constabulary show up in the field. They got a camera. They're trying to photograph the phenomena. The camera's taken away from them by Air Force. There's a little bit of a disagreement that breaks out. The men surrounding the thing observe, at a certain point, a small reddish light coming in from the direction of the North Sea, and they watch, I'm sure, enwrapped, as it gets larger. Probably an aircraft, but no. No noise, moving like a balloon, well, moving very slowly, and it comes in over Cable Green. And then it comes in over the ground fog, and that was when it goes, you know, there's a blinding flash, and when Larry's eyes come back a few seconds later, there's the machine there. I just want to give you that backstory. Question?
Oh, we need
Kyle?
to cut it short here. We're after 5 o'clock.
Okay,
Okay,
so we're done?
we're done.
So thank you very much.